Professor Quix-T adjusted his holographic human disguise for the third time that morning, still unable to get the ears quite right. They kept flickering between human and his natural tentacle sensors whenever he got excited, which was approximately every 47 seconds. Standing before his class at the Galactic University's Department of Primitive World Studies, he could barely contain his enthusiasm. Students, today marks the beginning of your most challenging course yet. Earth 101, surviving the ultimate death world. He paused for dramatic effect, but the only response was the soft whirring of environmental suits and the occasional bleep of personal translation devices. At the back of the classroom, Zorn 7 suppressed a yawn, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light in a way that clearly telegraphed his boredom. The young Regellian had aced advanced plasma physics and quantum consciousness studies, and now they expected him to waste a semester studying some backwater planet? Please. I know what you're thinking, Professor Quix-T continued, his ears momentarily sprouting tentacles before he hastily corrected them. Why study a Class 3 civilization that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel? Well, let me tell you something interesting. Earth is the only known planet where the dominant species is simultaneously the most and least dangerous creature on the planet. This finally caught Zorn 7's attention, though he tried not to show it. Instead, he lazily raised one of his crystalline appendages. Professor, according to my research, humans are mostly water and can't even regenerate lost limbs. How dangerous could they be? Professor Quix-T's smile widened to an almost unsettling degree, his holographic disguise struggling to keep up. Ah, Zorn 7. Always quick to judge. Tell me, what's the most dangerous creature on your homeworld? The Crystal Crusher, of course. 15 meters long, acid blood, triple row of titanium hard teeth. Nothing survives an encounter. Interesting. And how many crystal crushers have humans captured and put in displays for their younglings to gawk at? The classroom fell silent. Even the environmental suits seemed to stop whirring. That's impossible, Zorn 7 protested. Humans don't have the technology to. They don't need it. Professor Quix-T's ears went full tentacle again, writhing with excitement. They have something far more interesting: audacity. Humans look at the most terrifying creatures in their environment and think, I wonder what that tastes like, or that would look great in my living room. They're the only species we've encountered that keeps apex predators as pets and calls them good boys. A Venusian student in the front row raised all three of her eye stalks. Professor, surely you're exaggerating for effect. Not at all, per Q. In fact, our mandatory field trip next week will prove everything I'm saying. We're going to visit one of their wildlife sanctuaries, where they keep their most dangerous creatures in surprisingly flimsy enclosures, mostly secured by something they call common sense and warning signs. Zorn 7 scoffed loudly enough for the whole class to hear. Let me guess, we'll see their fiercest predators, their most venomous creatures. Oh, much better than that. Professor Quix-T's grin somehow grew even wider. We're going to Australia. The word meant nothing to most of the class, but the professor's tone sent a shiver through their various anatomical equivalents of spines. And the best part, he continued, practically bouncing now, his entire holographic disguise flickering dangerously. We'll be guided by a genuine human expert. Someone who works with Earth's deadliest creatures every day. Someone who... The hologram finally gave up and collapsed entirely, revealing Professor Quix-T's true form, a mass of excited tentacles and eyes. He quickly reactivated it, smoothing down his illusory lab coat with an embarrassed cough. Sorry about that. Gets me every time. Now, who's ready to learn about proper emergency protocols when encountering something called a platypus? Zorn 7 slumped further in his seat, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that clearly expressed his skepticism. How bad could this Earth place possibly be? He'd survived advanced quantum consciousness studies, hadn't he? This would be the easiest course of his academic career. Poor Zorn 7. He had no idea what he was in for. The Australian wildlife sanctuary looked disappointingly ordinary, thought Zorn 7, as their cloaked shuttle touched down in what humans called a parking lot through his holographic disguise. He watched a few Earth vehicles crawl along at their painfully slow, sublight speeds. Remember, everyone, Professor Quix-T whispered as they disembarked. Maintain your disguises at all times, no metamorphosis, no spontaneous binary fission, and absolutely no telepathic communication. We're here to observe, not to cause an interplanetary incident. Again muttered someone in the back of the group. The professor's holographic face flushed. That was one time, And how was I supposed to know humans would react that way to a simple mass consciousness event? Their guide was waiting for them at the sanctuary entrance, looking exactly like the sort of person who'd spend their days surrounded by deadly creatures, which is to say, completely casual about it. He wore khaki shorts, a shirt with more pockets than strictly necessary, and the kind of smile that suggested he found everything mildly amusing. G-Day. I'm Dave Thompson, and I'll be showing you around today. He scratched his beard thoughtfully. Bit of an odd request, getting a private tour for an advanced xenobiology class from, where was it again? Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Professor Quix-T said quickly, his ears only slightly tentacular. Right, Dave's smile suggested he found this especially amusing. Well, follow me then. And remember the first rule of the sanctuary: everything here can and probably wants to kill you. He said this the same way someone might comment on the weather. The class shuffled after Dave, their holographic disguises maintaining perfect human appearances, while their various actual anatomies struggled with the concept of walking on two legs. Zorn 7 brought up the rear, his crystalline structure humming with barely contained disdain. Now over here we have some of our smaller residents. Dave gestured to a series of terrariums. These little beauties are responsible for most of our excitement. Q leaned forward, all three of her eye stalks straining beneath her hologram. But they're so tiny. Surely these aren't the dangerous creatures you mentioned. Oh, these are the worst ones, Dave chuckled. Take this fellow here. He pointed to what appeared to be a barely visible black dot with legs. Common redback spider, relative of the black widow. Nasty piece of work. Zorn 7 couldn't contain himself. That's what you consider dangerous? I could crush it with my smallest appendage. Wouldn't recommend it, mate, Dave said mildly. They tend to object to that sort of thing. Violently. The class continued past displays of snakes. This one's only the second most venomous in the world. Spiders, this little guy can kill you before you realize you've been bitten. And something called a platypus looks cute, but the males have venomous spurs. Because why not, right? With each exhibit, Zorn 7's crystalline humming grew louder. Finally, he could take it no more. This is absurd. Professor, I must protest. We are an advanced civilization. My species can withstand the vacuum of space. Are we really supposed to believe these tiny organisms are a threat? Dave raised an eyebrow. Sounds like someone needs a practical demonstration. Absolutely not. Professor Quix-T's entire hologram flickered in alarm. As your instructor, I forbid. But Zorn 7 was already stepping forward, his crystalline form vibrating with confidence beneath his human disguise. Yes, a demonstration. Let's see how your deadliest creatures fare against advanced alien biology. Did he just say alien? Dave asked, still smiling. He's very committed to roleplay, Professor Quix-T said weakly. Part of our advanced xenobiology methodology. Of course he is. Dave's smile grew wider. Well then, let's start with something small. How about our friend the Redback? The class watched in horror as their guide reached for the terrarium. Q's hologram briefly displayed all three of her eye stalks in panic. Professor Quix-T's ears had given up any pretense of humanity and were now fully tentacular. And Zorn 7, poor, overconfident Zorn 7, stood ready to prove once and for all that Earth's creatures were nothing compared to advanced alien life. He had no idea he was about to become a cautionary tale in Galactic University's curriculum for the next 1,000 years. Before we proceed with this demonstration, Dave said, his eternal smile taking on a slightly concerning edge, I should probably mention that redback bites are considered a medical emergency for humans. Zorn 7's crystalline structure pulsed with smug confidence. My exoskeleton can withstand temperatures hot enough to melt your primitive metals. What harm could this speck possibly do? Professor Quix-T's tentacle ears were now writhing in such distress that his hologram had given up trying to hide them. As your instructor, I must insist that I document this thoroughly for future classes. Zorn 7 interrupted. An excellent suggestion, Professor. The rest of the class had backed away to what they hoped was a safe distance, their holographic disguises clustering together, while their actual bodies tried to occupy as little three-dimensional space as possible. Q had retracted 2 of her eye stalks entirely, preferring not to witness what was about to happen in full detail. Dave carefully opened the terrarium, handling the tools with practiced ease. Last chance to reconsider, mate. No shame in respecting something just because it's smaller than you. Respect? It's barely visible. On my world, we keep creatures like this as decorative lighting. Zorn 7 stretched out one holographically disguised arm, beneath which his crystalline appendage glittered with arrogant superiority. Suit yourself, Dave shrugged, then deftly transferred the tiny spider onto a clear observation plate. Though I should mention, Redbacks particularly dislike shiny, reflective surfaces. Tends to make them a bit defensive. Defensive? What could it possibly? Zorn 7's question cut off abruptly as the spider, apparently taking personal offense at his crystalline structure's light show, decided to express its feelings on the matter. There was a moment of perfect silence. Then Zorn 7's hologram flickered violently as his crystalline form began to change colors in a way that his species definitely wasn't supposed to. "Oh dear," Professor Quix-T muttered. "That's not supposed to happen to a Regellian." "Interesting reaction," Dave commented, quickly securing the spider back in its enclosure. "Almost like his entire nervous system is reconfiguring itself. If he were human, I'd be calling an ambulance right about now." "If he were human," Quix squeaked, her remaining eye stalk quivering. "Well, yeah," Dave's smile hadn't wavered. "But since you're all obviously advanced aliens trying very hard to maintain your cover, I reckon we might need a different approach." The class froze. Their holograms stuttered collectively. "Oh, come on," Dave chuckled. "I work with Australian wildlife. You think I can't spot a bunch of poorly disguised aliens? Your professor's ears keep turning into tentacles." "They do not," Professor Quix-T protested as his ears did exactly that. Meanwhile, Zorn 7 had progressed from changing colors to emitting a high-pitched crystalline resonance that was probably meant to be screaming. His usually transparent form had taken on a swirling pattern of neon colors that would have made a rainbow feel inadequate. "Fascinating," Dave mused. "The venom seems to be reacting with his crystalline structure. Never seen that before, and I've seen a lot." "This is terrible," Professor Quix-T wailed. "The university board will never approve another field trip. They still haven't forgiven us for the incident with the squirrels." "If it helps," Dave offered, "he's not the first overconfident visitor we've had to rush to emergency care. Though he might be the first one who's starting to glow in the dark." Indeed, Zorn 7 had begun to emit a pulsing light show that would have put a disco ball to shame. Several nearby birds had stopped to watch, apparently critiquing his color choices. "We need to get him back to the ship." Qu's last eye stalk was now fully dilated in panic. "Probably not your best option," Dave said calmly. "Unless your advanced alien medicine knows how to deal with Earth spider venom. Because I'm thinking those colors aren't supposed to be spreading like that." The class watched in horror as Zorn 7's usually pristine crystalline form began to resemble a lava lamp having an existential crisis. Right then, Dave clapped his hands together. "Who's up for a crash course in Earth emergency medical services? I promise it'll be educational. Though you might want to work on a better explanation for why your friend is turning into a living aurora borealis." As the class rushed to help their psychedelically glowing classmate, Dave pulled out his phone to make a call. "Hey, remember that bet about when I'd next have to call in a weird one? You owe me $20, mate." Just another day at an Australian wildlife sanctuary, really. Emergency protocols for alien spider bites, as it turned out, were surprisingly absent from both the Galactic University Handbook and Earth's medical literature. This oversight was becoming increasingly problematic as Zorn 7's crystalline structure continued its impromptu light show in the sanctuary's first aid room. According to the standard first aid manual, Dave said, flipping through pages with remarkable calm, "We should keep the patient still and calm, though it doesn't specify what to do if the patient is cycling through colors that shouldn't exist in this dimension." Professor Quix-T paced frantically, his hologram giving up entirely and revealing his true form every third step. "This is a disaster. The paperwork alone will take decades. Do you know how many forms you have to fill out when a student violates the Prime Directive?" "That's Star Trek," Mate Dave helpfully pointed out. "Different science fiction universe." "Oh, right. Still, the principles are sound." Q, who had finally re-extended all three eye stalks, was attempting to scan Zorn 7 with various alien medical devices, all of which were giving readings that consisted mainly of error messages and the occasional confused beep. "The venom appears to be causing some sort of cascade reaction in his crystalline matrix," she reported. "Also, he's beginning to harmonize with Earth's magnetic field." As if to demonstrate, all the compasses in the first aid kit suddenly spun wildly, and several nearby smartphones demanded to recalibrate their GPS. "Fascinating," Dave mused. "Never seen a redback bite do that before." though there was that one time with a tourist and a platypus. We need to get him to a medical facility. Professor Quix-T's tentacles were now tied in literal knots of anxiety. But how do we explain this? He gestured at Zorn 7, who had begun floating slightly above the examination table while emitting what sounded suspiciously like show tunes in crystalline resonance. Well, Dave scratched his beard thoughtfully. We could always tell the truth. The entire class turned to stare at him in horror. Or, he continued, we could say he's a performance artist who had an unfortunate accident while preparing for a light show installation. The emergency department here has seen weirder things. It is Australia, after all. With that could work. Professor Quix-T's tentacles began to unknot themselves. But how do we transport him? Our ship's cloaking device won't work with him broadcasting on all frequencies like this. Indeed. Zorn 7 was now inadvertently picking up and remixing local radio stations through his crystalline structure. The combination of emergency alerts, weather reports, and top 40 hits was creating a surprisingly catchy melody. Not to worry, Dave pulled out his phone again. I know a guy with a van. Very discreet. Used to transport exotic animals. He never asks questions, especially since that incident with the talking cockatoo that kept predicting the lottery numbers. But what about human medicine? Q worried. Their primitive treatments couldn't possibly. Excuse me, came Zorn 7's voice, now modulated through what seemed to be several radio frequencies at once, but could we perhaps debate the relative merits of medical systems after I stop being a walking disco ball? I believe I'm starting to pick up satellite transmissions. Right, you are. Dave nodded. Though you might want to keep that last bit quiet. Our telecommunications companies would have a field day with you. The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside interrupted any further discussion. Dave peered out the window and grinned. Ah, perfect timing. Everyone remember the cover story? He's an avant-garde performance artist who got too experimental with his materials, and Professor. Yes, Professor Quix-T's tentacles quivered expectantly. You might want to do something about your ears. They're broadcasting in FM now. As they prepared to move their glowing, floating, musically inclined patient, Professor Quix-T made a mental note to update the university's emergency protocols, somewhere between adequate environmental suit maintenance and proper holographic disguise techniques. He'd need to add a new section why antagonizing Earth's smallest creatures is a terrible idea. The van's driver, to his credit, took one look at the situation and simply said, "Hospital's gonna charge extra for the light show, mate. Just another Wednesday in Australia." The emergency room at Western Sydney Hospital had seen its share of unusual cases, but even the most seasoned staff members had to pause when the latest patient rolled in, broadcasting what appeared to be a mixture of whale songs and last week's soccer scores through his supposedly human body. Right, said Dr. Martinez, consulting her clipboard with admirable composure. Says here the patient is a performance artist. That's right, Dave confirmed cheerfully. Had a bit of an accident with some experimental materials. Very avant-garde stuff. Aha, Dr. Martinez watched as Zorn 7's hologram flickered, momentarily revealing a crystal formation that would have made a geologist question their career choices, and the light show. Part of his art installation, Professor Quix-T offered quickly, his own hologram struggling to keep his tentacle ears in check. Very, very modern. And the floating. Interpretive commentary on gravity as a social construct. Dr. Martinez's expression suggested she was mentally calculating whether her medical malpractice insurance covered extraterrestrial incidents. I see. And I suppose the fact that he's currently broadcasting the shipping forecast is also art. Weather's very big in the modern art scene, Dave contributed helpfully. In the corner, Q was attempting to look casual while surreptitiously scanning the hospital's medical equipment with her eye stalks, an effort somewhat undermined by the fact that her hologram kept displaying all three of them whenever she got excited. According to these primitive but fascinating instruments, she whispered to Professor Quix-T, the venom is causing a quantum-level disruption in his crystalline matrix. Also, he's picked up Netflix. As if on cue, Zorn 7 began projecting what appeared to be Season 3 of The Crown from his midsection. That's a copyright violation, Dave noted mildly. Dr. Martinez pinched the bridge of her nose. Okay, look. I've worked emergency medicine in Australia for 15 years. I once treated a man who claimed he'd been beaten up by an angry eucalyptus tree. And honestly, he was probably right. So how about we skip the performance art story, and you tell me what really happened? The aliens froze. Their holograms collectively skipped a frame. "Would you believe," Dave began, "that he's actually an alien who got cocky about Earth wildlife and got bit by a redback spider, causing an unprecedented reaction in his crystalline biology that's turned him into a combination of a disco ball, radio tower, and streaming service?" Dr. Martinez stared at him for a long moment. "Finally, someone tells me the truth around here," she made a note on her clipboard. "That makes way more sense than the performance art story. The modern art scene isn't nearly this weird." You believe us?" Professor Quix-T's tentacles emerged fully in surprise. "Sir, your ears have been alternating between tentacles and human ears for the past 5 minutes. Also, your student is currently broadcasting the weather in Norwegian, and I'm pretty sure I just saw him display the next week's lottery numbers." 7, 23, 34. Zorn 7 began to recite. "Don't write those down," Dave warned the nurse who had reached for a pen. "Trust me, it's more paperwork than it's worth." "Right then," Dr. Martinez said briskly. "Standard protocol for Australian wildlife envenomation, with adjustments for crystalline-based alien biology. Let's start with the antivenin and work our way up from there. Though I should warn you, your insurance probably doesn't cover this." Insurance? Professor Quix-T's tentacles tied themselves in new and interesting knots. "Don't worry about it," Dave patted him on what he hoped was a shoulder. "I know a guy who specializes in unusual insurance claims. Ever since that incident with the psychic kangaroo." "I don't want to know," Dr. Martinez interrupted. "Now, someone want to explain why the patient is starting to broadcast what appears to be alien soap operas?" Everyone turned to look at Zorn 7, who was indeed projecting what seemed to be a dramatic scene involving tentacled beings arguing about crystal property rights. "Oh, that's as the nebula turns," Q said without thinking. "Last season's finale was amazing," she caught herself. "I mean, more performance art." Dr. Martinez sighed and reached for her phone. "I'm going to need more antivenin, and someone from the IT department, and possibly a copyright lawyer." Just another night in an Australian emergency room. 1 month later, in the main lecture hall of Galactic University's Department of Primitive World Studies, Zorn 7 stood before his peers, his crystalline structure still occasionally flickering with faint traces of rainbow colors whenever he got nervous. "And that concludes my presentation on why we should stop underestimating Earth's fauna, a personal case study," he said, his usually confident resonance now carrying a distinct note of humility. "Are there any questions?" Every appendage, tentacle, and eye stalk in the room shot up. "Yes," per Q. "Is it true that you're still picking up Earth streaming services? Because my dormitory's entertainment system is broken, and I heard you're getting something called Disney Plus." Professor Quix-T quickly intervened, his ears only slightly tentacular these days. "Let's focus on the academic aspects of Zorn 7's experience. After all, this case study has already been added to the university's required reading under catastrophic failures in xenobiological risk assessment." In the back of the lecture hall, a holographic projection of Dave flickered to life, his eternal smile now broadcast across the galaxy. "Don't forget to mention the part about the hospital gift shop, mate. Never seen someone pay their medical bill and accidentally predicted lottery numbers before." "Yes, well, Zorn 7's crystal structure briefly displayed a test pattern. I think we can skip that part. The important lesson here is that size is not proportional to danger when it comes to Earth species. In fact, my research suggests an inverse relationship." "Tell them about the gift shop incident," someone shouted from the back. Zorn 7 sighed, emitting a brief burst of static. "Fine. Yes, while under the influence of the venom, I apparently gained temporary precognitive abilities and successfully predicted 3 consecutive lottery draws. The hospital was kind enough to accept this as payment for their services. Especially after I accidentally broadcast next season's episodes of several popular television shows. The streaming services are still trying to figure that one out," Dave's hologram added cheerfully. "But the real significance." "The real significance," Professor Quix-T interjected, trying to restore academic order, "is how this experience has advanced our understanding of Earth's unique biological defense mechanisms. Zorn 7's case has opened up entirely new fields of study in xenobiology, quantum communications, and media distribution rights. And emergency insurance policies," Dave added. "My mate in the insurance business had to create a whole new category active spider." "Moreover," Zorn 7 continued, his crystalline form briefly displaying what appeared to be a test pattern, "this incident has led to a revolutionary paper on the interaction between Earth venoms and non-carbon-based life forms, although I could have done without being the test subject. Don't forget the best part, Dave's hologram grinned. Tell them about your new job offer. The class leaned forward eagerly. Yes, Zorn 7 admitted, his crystal structure briefly glowing pink with embarrassment. Earth's leading telecommunications companies have apparently expressed interest in studying my newly acquired broadcasting abilities. Something about revolutionizing satellite technology. And Dave prompted. And several streaming services have offered me contracts to act as a mobile broadcasting station for underserved areas. He paused. Though we're still negotiating the rights to the quantum-entangled entertainment packages I accidentally created during the fever dream phase. Professor Quix-T's tentacle ears wiggled with pride. This is exactly the kind of practical education our primitive world studies program aims to provide, though perhaps with fewer violations of international broadcasting rights in the future. Speaking of broadcasting, Q raised an eye stalk. Is it true that you can still pick up something called cat videos from Earth's information network? Before Zorn 7 could answer, Dave's hologram cut in. Actually, that reminds me, wait until you hear about what happened when we tried to explain Earth's internet cat obsession to the Galactic Copyright Office. That, Professor Quix-T said firmly, is a lesson for another day. For now, let's focus on the primary takeaway from Zorn 7's experience on Earth. Everything can kill you, especially the things that don't look dangerous. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they'll only turn you into a walking telecommunications satellite with an unexpected talent for lottery predictions. And remember, Dave's hologram added with his trademark grin, this all happened because of our smallest spider. Wait until I tell you about the big ones. The entire class involuntarily shifted their various appendages away from him, while Zorn 7's crystal structure briefly displayed the international symbol for thank you, but absolutely not. In the end, Zorn 7's presentation received the highest marks in the department's history, was published in 17 intergalactic journals, and became required reading for all future xenobiology students. It also spawned a highly successful streaming series, but that's a story for another day. As for Dave, he's still giving tours at the wildlife sanctuary, telling visitors about the time an alien got cocky with a redback spider. Most people think he's joking. Most people don't notice that some of his regular visitors seem to flicker oddly in photographs, or that the sanctuary's Wi-Fi has become mysteriously excellent since that day. Just another perfectly normal outcome of an encounter with Australian wildlife.